7:05 on CJED 800. Welcome to today's Entrepreneur, presented by Fuller Landau, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with Fuller Landau's Josh Miller. How are you, Josh?
Excellent, thank you.
Great. And on the program tonight, we have with us Jean-Marc de la Plante from Allez Up Gym. Jean-Marc, welcome to CJED.
Thank you very much.
So we begin very simply by asking you, what is it you do for a living? Tell us about Allez Up Gym.
Okay, well, I run with my family an indoor climbing facility. So Allez Up has been around for about 16 years, and we operate out of Point St. Charles, just south of the canal. And we offer services to people who rock climb, who want to climb indoors. Not only people who climb outdoors and train, but also beginners and anybody who's interested, basically.
So you really have kind of walls for all types, all shapes, all sizes, beginners, intermediates, and then some.
Exactly. Yeah. Our clientele has always been really from, we teach probably 300 lessons a year to beginners, and we also have some of our clients that are some of the best climbers in Quebec. So we really serve everyone.
Now, you weren't always in this business. How did you get into this Allez Up company?
It's kind of a funny story, actually. I was about 16 when I first went to Allez Up as a client. I had never heard of indoor climbing before, and when I went there, I said, "This is a really cool place. I wish I could be part of this somehow," and started hanging around there all the time as a client, and then eventually started working there, just belaying kids for birthday parties and giving lessons and stuff like that. And eventually, I heard that the business was for sale, and somehow convinced my parents to, take the step and invest with me into the business.
How long were you working there before you decided to say, hey, maybe we should venture in?
5 years. I started there in 1998, and we bought it in 2003. So it's been 10 years now that we've owned the business.
Were you still in school at the time?
I was still in school. I was at HEC in university, studying economics, and we bought it when I was in second year.
So you're studying you're in school, you're studying economics, you know that, the pluses got to outweigh the minuses when it comes to business.
Yeah.
How did you know that this place would be right? How did you know that this place you could make a go of it and make the right profits?
Yeah, I think the interest for me was less about the money and more about the fact that I really wanted to be deeply involved in a business like this. But then when we were started to get interested in buying the business, I started looking at the numbers and realized that it was a great little business, and it was just badly run in a way, not fair to the previous owner, but it was undervalued, I would say.
So you think that you went in there thinking, I know this business, I'm a fan of this business, I can run it better than the current owners?
Yeah, I think that the past owner was getting tired. Running a business with a bunch of students as your employees it's quite tiring, I would say. So he had kind of lost his oomph, and I was ready to take it on full force. So I think we were, as a team, our family was ready for it.
So which means that you really probably had to do some convincing to your family and probably some outside people, a little bit to yourself. What was the first step you took? Was it a business plan? Was it just looking at the numbers? Was it saying, Mom, Dad, this is just good for me so I can get off your back?
Yeah, I was quite naive at first. I told the owner that I was interested and started building a very preliminary business plan, and even approached people for financing on my own. And
people like the banks?
The bank, yeah, bank, and some friends of mine that could have had money to invest, parents of friends of mine. And
what was that first experience of the bank when you walked in with your first business plan?
It was a little bit humiliating in a sense, because I really didn't know. I'm studying business administration, economics. You would think that I know how to approach these things, but it was the learning curve was quite steep, I would say. They didn't laugh, but they said, go, work on this a little bit, come back when you have something a little bit more solid. So at that point, I kind of forgot about it for a few months, and then finally got the family involved. And we took about a year to really go through it together as a family. And then when we finally made the decision, we went ahead, and it's been a great decision ever since.
Let's talk business plans for just a second, because certainly when starting up or when buying a business or something of the like, really understanding it and getting to know the business and seeing if it's really worth your while, business plans serve a great purpose. They not only for financiers of the bank, but really for your own personal use.
Exactly.
So after that first kind of draft of a business plan, did you kind of, did it evolve from there? Did you do any further ones? Did you kind of take it apart? Tell me the importance of a good business plan in your own viewpoint.
Yeah, I think that when we went about it the second time, my parents really helped and told me, you have to show us how you're going to create value here, because all your ideas are great about, building the community and things like that, but how is it going to correlate to dollars and cents? And going through that was important, because I also understood that it had to make business sense, and not just sense for making it a great place to be. It had to correlate to something. But more than that, I think that we really, it helped us evaluate what the business was worth, because the purchase price was, all over the place. It was really, when it came down to making the business plan, that's when we said, okay, we can pay this much for the business, and that's how much we paid.
When you're evaluating the business, it's always an interesting event or timing to go and get information from the actual owner. Did you have difficult time getting that information, dissecting it, trying to figure out what's real versus what's not?
Yeah, I would say that that really played to our advantage. The owner at the time wasn't doing a great job of keeping his books in order, and in that situation, if you're thinking about selling your business, make sure your books are in order before you start handing things out, because once we start asking questions and he's like, oh no, this number is more here, and and then you realize that the ball is in your court.
Were you ever concerned that the business was too fun to make money?
I think my parents were concerned with that. I wasn't. I had seen it grow in the last 5 years, and it's a great business. It's super fun, but I think that there are many things that make it one of the things that Allez Up does well, and it did it well before I was involved, is that people come, they enjoy it, and they stay for a very long time. And I think that has a lot of value. And we have clients that, they say that they raised me because they knew me when I was 16 and working there, So that to me was the key factor for, it's fun, but it's also a great community where people stay and, get year passes year after year.
When you first were figuring out to buy this business and the first time in, how many hours did you spend there? I mean, did you live there? Did you really want to, to get to know that business, you really got to spend time. It's not a 9-to-5 job anymore.
No, yeah, and especially that the busy times for Allez Up are at night. During the day, you're getting stuff ready, and then you end up staying into 9, 10, 11 o'clock sometimes. So at the very beginning, it was my mother and I working around the clock. My mom had a job in manufacturing, and she quit that job to come and work with me at the gym. And I remember working so hard and so long, and just spending so much time there that you would get sick of it at times. Like, I hate climbing. I don't want to be involved anymore. But I think that's when you work hard like that, that's when you create the value. And we really put a lot of sweat equity into it. And
there's no question that there's sacrifices that come along with it. It's interesting you said your mom quit her job to join you. And I think when we come back from the break, we'll explore that just a touch more.
7:19 on Today's Entrepreneur. Welcome back. Our guest this evening, Jean-Marc Plante from Allez Up Gym. And Josh, we're talking about family businesses and how this started out as a project between him and his parents.
And it was really, he threw in just in the last seconds before the break, he was like, oh yeah, and my mom quit her job to join me. And I kind of thought that was pretty interesting because, nobody quits their job on a whim. And, it's definitely must be a thought process. So maybe you can elaborate a little on that and how your idea really came into this family affair.
Yeah, I think that it's something that stressed me out a lot too. And I knew that my mom was going to be quitting her job and kind of diving right into it. But at the same time, I know my mom quite well, and I knew that she would she's a hard worker. I think that's one of our family traits. And I knew that we would be able to make it work, basically. Although at first working with your mom all day, every day, it's quite an experience. But it's great now because we're so close. The family's really close, and it's really been a good experience overall.
Now, coming back to the buying a business, because it's always very interesting. You know, we get a lot of people that start their own business on the show, and some that buy another business. That must involve a whole process that is very interesting. I'm sure you learned a lot from. Of that whole buying experience between dealing with the owner and the professionals, the lawyers, the accountants, is there anything that stood out? Is there anything you can recount to us that you felt you learned the most from?
It was an interesting position for me, especially at the time because I was working there. So the relationship with my boss was evolving and changing, and the relationship with the other employees that were around was also changing because I was going to be their boss, and they knew that. But I think the key things that I remember was it felt a lot better once we started involving the right people, getting a good lawyer to help us work through the legal issues, getting a good accountant to help us filter through all the stuff. Even though my parents, both my parents are very skilled in accounting and things like that, having a outside person that can really help you clear your head is really great.
And I guess to bounce your thoughts off of as well.
Yeah, exactly. They're not involved in it. They don't have their finances aren't at stake, so they look at it with a clearer head. And it's been the same thing with our building the new gym that we just did last year. I really learned that having the right people involved is really the most important factor. They're specialists in everything, and you need to really go and get those brains and bring them around the table.
Did it take a long time to close that deal from beginning to end?
Yes.
And if so, why?
I think that it took quite a long time, almost a year. And I think because the old owner was quite attached to his business, even though he was clearly unhappy there, he still had some emotional attachment to it. And that got kind of complicated. So he would come back on our negotiations sometimes and say, wait, I'm not willing to do that anymore. So that was pretty complex. But then the due diligence and everything also takes a lot of time. And it really does. By the end, when the deal is done, it's like, okay, I feel like I've already climbed a mountain. Now I need to actually run the business that I just bought. So.
Or at least climbed a wall.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, dealing with family in your business can be, a great experience. It can be trying, but one of the items that is sometimes difficult to overcome or deal with is the roles that each play. You're there working with your mom. Who does what? Do you overlap? Do you complement? Do you supplement each other? Do you argue a little bit? And I think when we come back from the break, we'll talk a little bit about how you divide the roles amongst the family that's in the business, and kind of we'll figure out things from there.
Jean-Marc de la Plante from Allez Up Gym, our guest this evening on Today's Entrepreneur at 7:23. 7:25 on Today's Entrepreneur, our guest is Jean-Marc de la Plante from Allez Up Gym. And so they're a rock climbing business, Josh, family business. Parents got involved at the early stages. And shall we continue with Jean-Marc?
Yeah, just to quickly know the roles between you and your mom, because it's the two closest family members in the business. Is it easy to divide roles? Do you overlap constantly?
No, it took us about 5 years to figure out who was going to do what. Because at first we weren't ready for that kind of all the work, basically. But now there's a lot more of the family that's involved. My father is like the board of directors of the company is the whole family, basically. Both my parents, my brother Joseph, and my sister Geneviève, and we've got it pretty dialed in terms of who does what. My sister is really in charge of marketing and human resource. My brother is the chairman of the board, and he works in Toronto in the financial and mining sectors. So he has, his more corporate side that he brings to the table. I'm the dreamer and the person who always wants to do different crazy things, and everybody just puts their hand on their forehead,
creating a higher wall to climb.
Yeah, exactly. And then and my parents have been really good at they're the owners, they're the sole owners of the company, but they really listen to us and they really let us do what we want with the company, which is really great.
What happens when you disagree? You ever use an outside advisor? Do you ever like bounce ideas off of the outside advisors? Because your board is really family.
Yeah. We have people that we use. We trust our top employees a lot to bounce ideas off of. And like I was saying earlier, I've known some of my clients for a really long time. So sometimes I'll just go and ask them a quick question or see how they feel about something. And generally, if we're disagreeing, obviously the owners have the final say. But we don't really see it that way. Like, although my parents are the owners on paper, we're really, if it's 4 against 1, we'll go that way.
They've never come out and said you're spending money recklessly. Let's keep your ideas in check. You're financing. I mean, that's got to be a huge thing. They put the money in the business. Mm-hmm. Do you control your finances well? Do you what's the lesson? What's the kind of philosophy you apply in running your business from a cash flow standpoint?
My mother is really the controller. She makes sure that everything that's going out is going to pay someone that did something useful for the business. So she keeps us in check.
And you still get paid, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Even if I do, if I waste my time for a week. But yeah, we have quite good control of the situation. It does happen that I'll spend too much time, which is also money, or too much actual money on something that's a bit pointless, and they'll say, look, it's a great idea, but maybe we should just put that on the back burner for now and move forward. But for the financing part, it was quite the experience financing this new project. And we learned a lot, and we learned how to work on very detailed projections that we still keep up to date. And I think that keeps us all reassured in a way. We know more or less what the cash situation is going to be like in 6 to 12 months. So it goes pretty well. We're pretty confident in what we're doing.
The cash flow projection that you're talking about, did you do that for the bank or for yourselves?
We did it for the bank. And at the time, I remember being a little bit frustrated by it. But it's the best thing that we've ever done. I think that we learned a lot from it. And any time that we want to see if something's a good idea, we always go back to that and look at it from the cash flow perspective.
And, Dan, so many people do these cash flow projections, so many entrepreneurs for the bank, for third parties. They get into it, they go detailed, some are less detailed, some figure out, I just got to get my financing, so let me just do it for them. But the reality is, the bank should be the second person you're doing it for, the third. It's for yourself. You really, to control your business, to see what's coming up, to really plan ahead and not always run by the seat of your pants.
Yeah.
That's where the biggest benefit is. I mean, yes, okay, it serves a purpose of hopefully getting financing, but if you're not using it for your own purposes, then I think you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
I think when we come back, there's so much to talk about. We talked about family. We talked about little financing startup. We've got marketing to cover. We got human resource to cover. When we come back from the break, we'll grill Jean-Marc a little bit more. Yeah,
and what happens when an employee becomes the boss? How do the other employees react to that? So we'll get to that question after the news. Jean-Marc de Plante is our guest from Allez Up Gym on Today's Entrepreneur. 7:34 on Today's Entrepreneur. Welcome back. This is a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with Josh Miller, of course, of Fuller Landau. And our guest this evening is Jean-Marc de Plante from Allez Up Gym. It's an indoor rock climbing facility in Point St. Charles, and not a meat market, Jean-Marc. But you said people do sort of. There's definitely a social community aspect that I just want to ask you about real briefly. And you met your significant other there as well.
Yeah, I met my girlfriend there. We've been together now 5 years, and a lot of the people that I know have met their significant others there, and now they have the kids, and the kids come and climb at the gym as well. Mm-hmm. And it's just a great place to hang out. Imagine when you're doing yoga, for example, you're in this room and you're side by side with guys and girls or whatever you're interested in, and then you can't talk to them. But with climbing, there's a lot of socializing. Like, you chat with people about different ways to climb the routes and this and that. So it's a really great place to meet people and to be part of a community.
And do you try to, sorry, Josh, do you try to sort of to sell that community aspect when you take a look at your marketing plan? That you're really creating sort of not just a place where people work out, but a place where people can socialize.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's our biggest. The most important aspect of the gym is the community. You talked about marketing. We don't really spend any money on marketing. We really believe that if you treat your customers really well, they will bring customers to you without you having to spend money on too many ads or things like that. At the same time, I think that people come because they're interested in climbing, and then they stay because they're interested in the community. I have some clients that joke that sometimes we used to have a chessboard on one of our tables, just like painted onto the table. This guy would just come and play chess for 2 hours and realize that he hadn't climbed, but then he had to go home. So it's a great place to hang out.
Has your marketing philosophy stayed the same from the beginning? Like when you first bought it, you didn't feel like you had to go out and make a blitz, new owners and whatever. It's been pretty constant and pretty word of mouth the whole way.
Mm-hmm. We've learned to use, obviously, social media, and we do, I would say, present ourselves a lot better and communicate better what our vision is. But we don't have a very large marketing budget, if you will. We'd much rather spread the word through our clients. We've tried things like bring your friend, and we'll give you half off or something like that. But really, people do it naturally. You don't really need to stimulate it that much. If you really create a place that's awesome and spend the money that you would spend on marketing, you spend it in the gym doing improvements and things like that. It really helps to grow the business organically.
So does that mean there's not much competition out there?
There is. There are 3 climbing gyms on the island that are commercial gyms, but I think that when there were just 2, we've always been the climbers gym. So the place where people go. It's not just 4 climbing walls and people walk in one end and money comes out the other. It's really where you go to meet other climbers, to go climb outside or socialize and things like that. So it is a competitive. There are competitors, but I would not say that we're in huge. It's not a race to the finish with the competitors.
So, but how do you stay ahead of them? Like, if there's only a couple are growing, do you just try to make sure you just have the best facility and hopefully in the right location? And if so, is that the only thing, or what's next?
I think that we try to keep the climbing spirit alive at the gym, even though it is growing and there's more and more clients. We try to, quote unquote, keep it real, and just make sure that our core clients are the true climbers are happy. And if we can do that, then everybody else just wants to be a part of that in a way. So,
is location important?
Location is very important. Allez Up is in kind of an odd location when you think about it. 15 years ago, Pointe St. Charles was not the happening place that it is now. And we managed to grow in that kind of environment, and I think we were also part of what contributed to make it a better place. A lot of people discovered the Point by trying to find the gym and getting lost and being like, "What neighborhood is this?" So it's been really good for us where we've been.
You've been owning and operating this facility for the last, say, 10 years, even though it's been around 16. Does it stop at one place? Like, do you think well beyond today and other locations that you either may open or just make this one even better?
Yeah, well, 2 things. First of all, we do have a growth plan. I think we have a really good formula that can do really well in other markets. So we are looking at growth in that respect. But also in terms of working on the present business, a friend once told me if your business is running itself, it's because it's rolling downhill. So that's always kind of stayed in my head, and we spend a lot of time trying to make things better, even though they're pretty good. Work on them, make them better, make them easier for the client. Change our policies so they're easier to understand, or things like that. We just try to always make sure we're on point.
Now, we've been talking a lot about people in some way, shape, or form, the startup and the buying of the business and marketing and competition. A lot about people. And of course, you need the right people to keep that community spirit and that community environment alive and well and going at Allez Up. The question that Dan asked just before the break at 30, you bought a business, you're 21 years old. How do people start looking at you as an owner versus as a co-employee?
Yeah,
and where's the level of respect that you have to build up?
It took a really long time because I was quite close with the people that were working there when we bought it. And I would say it took 3 to 4 years before, well, a lot of them stopped working there. And it took a long time, but I also, I'm quite a shy person, or I was when I was a teenager. And
Until you came on air.
until I came on, exactly. No, I was quite shy, and I really learned to communicate with people. And at first it was excruciating for me to delegate and to tell people what to do, until I realized that as an employee, you want that. You want to be told, not every 2 seconds, but you want to be told what your objectives are and what will make the owners happy if you do your job correctly and things like that. So when I started disconnecting myself, not completely, but in a way disconnecting myself from the employees, or at least not being best friends with them.
Yeah, there's a line to be drawn at some point.
Yeah, there's a slight line to be drawn. Doesn't mean you can't hang out with them and go for drinks after work. But when I created that relationship of like, okay, I'm the boss and you guys are the employees, it really helped to just clarify things.
Did you have to have a talk with them? Did you have a sort of like a group meeting when you took over, saying, "Listen, guys, I'm in charge now. Here's how it's going to be"? Or
yeah, but it would have been good in a comedy routine, because I was trying to stay cool and say, guys, things are going to change. It's going to be just like it was before, and da da da. And then I quickly realized that no, it had to evolve and it had to change. And it's not to say that it's a bad thing. I mean, I think Allez Up is still a really great place to work. But when we bought it, it was much more of a free-for-all. If the employees didn't feel like taking a large school group the next day because they were going climbing, they'd just say, "Oh, sorry, we're all booked up," and they'd hang up the phone. Whereas now we have much better systems in place to make sure that we serve everybody correctly and stuff like that.
So does the profile of your employee today, is it different than what it was 10 years ago?
Yes, definitely.
How has it changed?
10 years ago, we were afraid to hire anyone who wanted a full-time job or had any commitments like children or a mortgage, for example. And we would hire only students because we think, we can't promise them anything and they can't promise us anything, so it's kind of a fair trade. And in the end, after a couple of years, we started to realize, what? We can't rely on people who are here 1 month and not the other. And it takes a long time to train and costs a lot of money to train people. So we started hiring people that had more demands from us, and it forced us to be a lot better at offering them something really good that made them want to stay. And now we have, of 26 employees, I think about 6 or 7 of them have children and have bought homes. And it's a really good feeling to know that you're surrounded with people that have made your business their career choice, at least for now.
It's not always easy to find and keep people. What's been some of your successes in the way you retain your good people?
I think that climbers, anybody who's interested in climbing, I would say is, I don't want to say a free spirit, but is someone who puts a lot of value in traveling, and for them they'd trade off, a higher salary for more freedom to leave for 6 weeks or something like that. So that's something that we've worked on a lot, is making anybody who's full-time, giving them that option to eventually, if it's during the summer or, sometimes even in the dead of winter, which is our busy period, we've let people go on 2-month vacations to Thailand or something like that. Because let's face it, if you want to go climb a cool mountain somewhere, it takes time to get there. And once you're there, you don't want to just spend a week and come right back. So that's one of the things we do to really keep our employees happy and coming back.
It sounds like you've taken the time to really understand what makes the people you work with tick, and that's hugely important to make your business a success. And while we stay on the topic of human resources, because I know there's more things to talk about, and there's a formality behind some things and an informality behind others, we have Micheline Maillet that's coming up after the break.
Great. More on HR, and also joining us, Jean-Marc de la Plante from Allez Up Gym. So that's all coming up on today's Entrepreneurs. We're talking the HR angle now with Fuller Landau's HR specialist, Micheline Maillet. Welcome back, Micheline.
Good night. Hi.
Hi.
Dan, I mentioned policy manuals earlier. Policy manuals are an interesting product to use in the environment. I think there's a lot of companies that don't have it, a lot of companies that do. There's certainly many benefits for. And Micheline, I guess to kick us off, Why have an employee policy manual?
Well, a lot of companies, think, okay, we're going to do this because we want to lay down the law, let everybody know what the rules are, what they can and can't do. Obviously, yes, there's a benefit for the employer for doing it for that purpose. But I also see a huge benefit just in terms of the management team knowing what the rules are for themselves as well, because sometimes it can be very ambiguous. If not, they're kind of left to themselves to decide, how am I going to treat this situation or this situation? And what ends up happening is that, of course, not all the managers will come to the same decision. One manager will decide, yes, I'm going to pay the sick time off. Another manager will decide, I'm going to pay when this person's uncle died, but not when this person's great aunt died. And so, it creates certain inequities. And that's where the employees start noticing, really wish I worked in this department because they get a lot better than we do. And so, yeah, it can create a lot of inequity, definitely.
Take advantage of the inconsistency.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, when you're creating that manual that can have a million different aspects to it, we can come to that in a moment, who gets involved in creating it? Is it just the top people, the owners, or should you really get some of the others involved so that you know kind of what may come your way?
I definitely think it's important to get the management team involved in it. It can be a very daunting task for a lot of companies. So, there are people, specialists in HR, obviously that can help with this type of thing who, know how to do it. Because if not, just kind of write it from scratch can be very difficult. But I would definitely say get the managers involved because they're the ones who actually have to apply these policies after. So you might think it's great to, set a certain rule, but maybe in its actual applications, the managers will see something that the owner didn't, for example.
Jean-Marc, do you have an employee policy manual in place?
We do, and I think it's always going to be work in progress. But we're trying to formalize a lot of those things. I like what you said about some people getting paid vacation, or if they're missing a day or whatnot, because that definitely used to happen, probably still happens, to be honest, in our business. So we realize now the importance of those policies, and we try to formalize it as much as possible.
Did it exist before you bought the business?
Oh, no.
Oh, you created it.
No, nothing existed when we bought the business, except for the client base was there, but everything else we made from scratch. And now we as we're trying to grow, we actually have a full manual for how to run a good climbing gym, basically. Also has employee policy stuff in it.
Yeah, what would be included? Is it how to do your job, or or is it more like, okay, if this certain thing happens as an employee and you're in the employer-employee relationship, this is what happens?
Yeah, we'll talk more about small, medium-sized business because the bigger the company, the more detailed often the policies could be. I would just say it's the general guidelines within a job. A lot of companies actually don't want to do a policy manual because they feel it's going to be too restrictive. So they say, I don't want to have such a tight rule for this. I want to have some flexibility. But just because you have a general rule doesn't mean you can't make the occasional exception to it also. So there's some judgment that could still be allowed in it. Now, if you're not going to respect it at all, then there's no point in having it. But you could, there's always some flexibility that you could have in there.
And certainly we know entrepreneurs, what they think one day, they might change their mind the next day.
Yeah, and it's definitely always a work in process. It's never, laws change. So just practically speaking, you're going to have to change it sometimes. There's also changes in, society, like social media. Policy manuals that we worked on 10 years ago didn't have any policy on social media, where today it's definitely a must-have.
More on HR issues and also Jean-Marc Plante's one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur. That's on the other side of this. 7:55 on today's entrepreneur, remaining minutes. And we're talking with Jean-Marc Plante from Allez Up Gym, a rock climbing facility in Point St. Charles. And we're talking HR as well with Micheline Maillet of Fuller Landau. And more about human resources before we get to Jean-Marc's piece of advice for today's entrepreneur.
We're talking about policy manuals. And I guess the next logical question to Micheline is, what are typical policies that you've seen in manuals, and maybe what are some of the more avant-garde ones that you don't see too often but that still apply?
Well, I would say the two most important policies to have in the manual, one of them is with regards to computer usage, so employees using their computers. If a company doesn't actually have a written policy that's actually sent out to employees that employees know about, stating that employees should have no expectation of privacy when using their computer, they can actually do whatever they want with the computer, and if ever there was something that went to court or was litigious, the employer wouldn't necessarily be able to use it against the employee, because the employee could say that they felt that they had a right to privacy when using it. So that's super important to have. Another one that's very important is with regards to harassment. Quebec for several years now has had a law on psychological harassment in the workplace, and one of the employer's obligations is to have a policy stating what is harassment, obviously that it's not permitted in the work environment, obviously, and what employees' rights are and what they should do should they feel they're being harassed and so on. That's very important because it's there's actually a law stating that employers have an obligation to prevent harassment, and the main way to do so is by having a policy.
In a nice social community with everybody wearing tight climbing clothes, I'm sure there's never harassment issues that come up at Allez Up.
No, it's we're quite good at that.
Very professional, I know. Are there any areas, Micheline, you see that are a little bit different, a little more avant-garde?
Well, today you're seeing more and more policies on flexible work arrangements. So, like what he was saying before about having a policy where people can take a leave of absence to travel. You see that type of thing more and more often now. We're offering 4 days a week, part-time, shared work arrangements. People are being a lot more flexible, and I think there is an advantage of formalizing the policy, because a lot of people will say that they feel it's a given right once they've been given this work schedule, but it's not. It's really a benefit the employer is giving you, and so just to remind the employees, what are the kind of rules to having this in terms of maybe responding to clients' needs and so on, taking care of your workload, and also to remind them that it could be removed if it doesn't work out.
Is that some people that can't do them on their own, I guess need help. Does the government offer any type of assistance in creating these employee manuals? Yeah,
there are definitely subsidies available through Emploi Québec. It varies from one year to the other depending on their budget and so on, but yes, there's definitely subsidies available.
Great, thank you very much. Important stuff. Policy manuals, not everybody has them, but you should. Jean-Marc de la Plante, I turn to you and ask you if you had some pieces of some words of wisdom, pieces of advice to give to today's entrepreneur. What would it be?
Yeah, I was thinking about it while we were talking, and I think I'm going to give three tips. I'll try to keep it short, though. First of all, I mentioned earlier involving the right people, and I think that that's really key. Especially, I've been in situations in financing where I'm not sitting in front of the right person, and I'm trying to get one kind of financing when they do something else, and it's really important to make sure you're sitting in front of the right people and also consulting with experts. Secondly, learn to communicate really well, because bad communication will ruin even the best idea. So you need to work on that all the time. If it's an email or a business plan or anything, you need to write and speak very well. And last piece of advice, I've always found that I've never really focused on the profits. They've kind of come from working in the right direction and trying to make people happy. Basically, if my goal is making people happy, I'll make money because of the business that I'm in, first of all. But from my experience, people that are too focused on that margin at the end, they kind of lose their focus. We're all in business to make money, but first of all, we need to please our clients. So.
Great three pieces of advice, and Dan, I'll give you the takeaway that I get, and certainly listening to the last few points that Jean-Marc made, is entrepreneurs that have their feet on the ground will absolutely go ahead in this world. Those that really are very aware of their surroundings, their environment, the people that they touch, that they need, that will help. Those are the ones that are absolutely going to be a success. So keeping your feet on the ground, Jean-Marc, kudos to you for that.
Thank you. Jean-Marc de la Plante of Allez Up Gym, thanks very much for joining us this evening. And Micheline Maillet, HR Specialist at Fuller Landau, thank you. And Josh, next week, 7 p.m. next Monday for another edition of Today's Entrepreneur.